Be careful who you piss off, because in this world, the Babayaga might just come for you.
No, I am the father.
And here we go.
That belongs in a museum!
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
This is Sparta!
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Easily Entertained, hosted by me, Bryson. If you enjoy this series, be sure to give us a like as well as a follow so you can get notified of all the new episodes. Today we are talking about the notorious action series called John Wick. The fourth one just came out a couple of weeks ago, so let's talk about it. Basically, if you don't know what John Wick is, the whole series of John Wick is about an assassin, or essentially a assassin sort of league organization called the High Table. But it mainly features this main character called John Wick. And John Wick is initially a retired assassin. He got out of the business because he wanted to live with his wife, who sadly dies. But after his wife dies, he receives a dog as a gift for her passing. She wants him to still be able to love something and not just seethe by himself. And so he gets a dog. But during that time when he gets that dog, he meets these Russian mafia members who are under the High Table, and they want his car, but he says no. He's like, piss off, you're not getting my car. And so they go to his house in the night, kill his dog, beat him up, and steal his car. And that's kind of where the whole series starts off. He goes to avenge them, and then after avenging the dog and killing those people, other people in the membership are like, well, you're back now, so we're going to make you have to do different things. Oh yeah, remember that favor you owe me? You have to do that now. And he is not having it. So then he has to do all these quests essentially, and then he ends up breaking the rules on sacred ground, which is usually the Continental hotels, which are meant to house these assassins, but they are not allowed to conduct business. But because he is annoyed that someone broke their promise, he kills them. And then in the third movie, he is on the run from all the assassins because he is then excommunicado, which means he's kind of free for everyone to hunt. And then it kind of goes through that. And then in this last movie, it is initially starting off as someone trying to find John Wick, and anyone who was friends with John Wick, he kills. He thinks John Wick is essentially a disease. They have to eliminate him. He can't be allowed to exist anywhere. And so they have to take out his friends as well as trying to take out John Wick. And so this movie that came out, the fourth one, is about him finally ending it. He's finally getting out. By the end of the movie, he's done. He's done with the High Table. He wins. And so the whole movie is like him kind of following that. He has to kind of go do a couple of side quests, essentially. He has to regain his family crest because the person that declared this bounty on him, he's a member of the High Table. He sits at the table, so he's very high up in the organization. And so to be able to get out, John Wick has to have a personal duel, essentially. And if John wins, he can leave. If the other guy wins, John Wick dies. And so he has to kind of go around and he has to get his family crest back, and they will only give that to him if he avenges a member of their family that was murdered, so he has to go kill another assassin, and it's kind of a lot of that. It's a very action type movie. It's kind of bloody, pretty violent, because of course you're following assassins. It's very interesting though to see how this world of assassins kind of works, because they kind of operate in broad daylight essentially. And John Wick is notorious for being incredibly good. He's a great assassin. They even call him the Babayaga, which is like the boogeyman. In the first movie, they're like, he's not the boogeyman. He's the guy you send to kill the boogeyman, so he's worse. And so it's always talked about how John Wick is like the number one assassin, which is kind of funny because you think everyone would realize that and stop trying to send people after him, because they're not going to win. John Wick knows what he's doing. He's a magnificent assassin. He will not let anyone win. He is almost like superheroes in a fact that his willpower is just what kind of keeps him going. He goes through things that should have killed him. At the end of the third movie, he gets shot several times on top of the building by the owner of the Continental, because they kind of planned this, but he gets shot and he falls off the building, and not just like straight down. Nah, he falls off. He hits fire escapes. He hits a garbage bin. He hits whatever he can. He should be dead. There is no way any normal person would live through all this, but because he's John Wick, the whole series is based around him, of course he wins. And so it makes for an interesting story, because you know John Wick, he's gonna win, but you're gonna see him get beat down and possibly lose over and over again. And usually it's not by one person, it's usually by a lot of different people, because he's so good. It can't just be a one-to-one. They have to bombard him with as many other assassins to try and overwhelm him rather than straight up beat him hand to hand, which I think is a very interesting way to do it, because they know how powerful he is, but they still want to try. And so instead of having to brute force it, they think they have to use quantity. And sorry, but John Wick's quality is just way too good. But in the last movie, so it is a bit of a spoiler here, so if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it first and then you can come back to this point. In the fourth movie, John Wick does die. During the duel, so at the very end, you have the final duel. Sorry, my chair is squeaky. But so the two assassins that kind of have to go back and forth, because the member of the high table assigns an assassin to do things for him so he can volunteer him to take his place in the duel. But it's based on like twos. So John Wick has the former owner of the Continental backing him, whereas the other assassin has the member of the high table. And so during this duel, it's a classic like high noon type style duel. They have to take 10 paces, they use pistols, and they shoot. And they see, and then every time they miss, they have to bring it in 10 paces. But so they keep going in, and finally they get to where they're about 10 paces from each other, and they shoot. Well, the other assassin shoots, because they planned this all along. So he shoots, John gets hit, because they're not wearing their bulletproof armor at this point. And so he gets hit, he falls to the ground. The member of the high table wants to finish it, but they didn't realize John Wick still has a bullet in his gun, so he shoots. Member of the high table is dead, John wins. But John has sustained so much damage that he can't continue. He is at the end. He bleeds out. It's over. It's all done. He gets buried. He's completed his objective, essentially. He got out, even though he died immediately after getting out. he got out. That was his objective the whole time. And he was without his wife. He did have a new dog, but I don't think that new dog was enough for him to really keep going. Had he gotten out beforehand and not like died, I think it's something he kind of was hoping for. He was hoping he would die. He didn't necessarily want to. He wanted to keep on fighting, but he was ready. He was ready to rejoin his wife. They even talk about this in the movie. They're like, do you think you'll even go to the same place as your wife? And he's like, probably not, but I can hope. And so I think that's kind of like a beautiful little end to John Wick story, which is kind of interesting because supposedly from a couple of news articles I've seen, they may be making a John Wick 5. I don't really understand how that will play because he died. Like, will they bring him back to life? Or maybe it'll be something that's more like, instead of a direct sequel, maybe that's like a prequel to how John became John Wick. I think that would be kind of interesting, but nonetheless, I think it's kind of cool how they did it. And something I've been seeing a bit recently is John Wick. The whole concept of the series is essentially a video game. John Wick is a video game adaptation, but not in the sense that we're used to. It's not adapting a specific game like Super Mario or Uncharted or The Last of Us. It's not a direct adaptation of anything. As far as I know, there's no John Wick game as of yet. I think they do want to make like a game, which I think would actually be kind of cool, just like playing as an assassin, but not Assassin's Creed style, like modern day assassin. I think that would be kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. But it's like the concept of a video game is what John Wick is. And when you start to think about it, it really is. The whole series is a concept of a game. You have John's main objective is to kill whoever he needs to and then get out. He wants to retire from being an assassin. He doesn't want to live this life anymore. That's it. And to get there, he has his linear story where he kind of has to defeat some main bad guys. So it's like members of the High Table or other assassins. He has to avenge the dog that died. So these are main objectives. But then you also have the side quests. You have like trying to find the High Table by walking out into the middle of the desert. He has to solve some issues with family. So he has to get his family crest back. So he has to go kill someone that they need avenged. And those are side quests. Those are not part of the main story, but he still kind of has to do them to fully complete the game. And all these side quests, as well as the main objective, are filled with NPCs. And if you don't know what an NPC is, if you're not a huge mega nerd like I am, an NPC is a non-playable character. So it's someone who's not a player. So if you think, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. So like Minecraft. Minecraft's a pretty good universal example most people understand. A player is your person. It's who you can play as. An NPC is any of the other characters or creatures in the game. So it's the villagers, it's the creepers, it's the pigs, the cows, whatever. It's anything that you can't play as yourself. In Pokemon, it's the people who run up to you and start battling you. You can't play those people, but you still interact with them. And John Wick is full of those people. You think other assassins, people that kind of send him on other quests. Any time he gets weapons or goes to a doctor, those are essentially NPCs in this video game world of John Wick. He has to be like, he puts his like coin down, his high table coin, and he's like, I need a suit. I need guns. And he goes through essentially shops as if you would in a video game. They're like, we have this option that could do da-da-da-da-da, and then this option that can do these bunch of things. And that is all video game concepts. And technically, it's just game concepts in general, but I think it's a more relevant option to say that they are video game concepts. I think especially because of all the interactivity that really happens, because you don't get this kind of stuff in like board games other than like D&D, because I think D&D is supposed to be a bit more interactional because you have a DM who's kind of planning everything out, and they give you little side quests and little people that you can have conversations with. And so those kind of correlate, but I think video games are a more universal example because not all board games are like that. But I do think that John Wick definitely fits the video game concept. It has a main objective, it has side quests, it has NPCs, it has achievements, essentially. Sometimes he gets something done and then he gets something immediately in return, which is kind of interesting because typically that's how a video game works. You essentially get something to add to your inventory or a medal or something like that. It shows your achievement. And I think that's exactly what this series does. And I think it's an interesting way to do a full action series because it's 4 movies. It's a fairly long series as of this point, essentially. Because most movies, I think they end with sometimes a sequel and sometimes 3 movies. Sometimes they have a trilogy. But 4 movies, I feel like, is a pretty decently long series. And action movies, I feel, don't always have a lot of continuing that can happen throughout the series. Because most movies, they are usually made originally just to stand alone. They're not meant to continue. They usually leave it open-ended so it could continue, but it's not a plan for it to continue. This series seems planned out as a whole. Everything kind of plays into each other, and they're not trying to rewrite things as the movies go on. For example, like the Star Wars sequels. I think they're overhated, but you can tell they weren't made with a unified vision. They are kind of jumbled around. And I think it's smart to plan out a whole series. Sometimes it is hard to do that because the way movies are pitched, they are usually not pitched with the idea that they should be really long series. They are usually pitched as a movie, and then the series is thought about a lot later. John Wick seems to have been thought of as a series from the beginning. That it may not have been pitched that way, but it seems it was thought of that way. And I think that's why the concept of it being a adaptation of the feeling of playing a video game is so big, because that's how a video game is. And I think video game adaptations, I think a good example is The Last of Us, because it's not just a single movie, it's a whole series in a show. They are thought of differently. They're thought of as a big picture, just like how video games are, because typically in a video game, you're thinking about the entire game, but you're also getting all the little details and stuff as you're playing. You don't play Mario and immediately go for Bowser's Castle. You have all the little levels. You have then the like sub bosses, like all the Koopalings, and that's what a video game is, because you're not just going straight for the main objective. You're not immediately rushing to the end. Although sometimes I feel like in modern culture, that's kind of been the case. It's trying to speed run through things, but that's not always the case. And I think John Wick is a good example of adapting adapting a video game that's not actually a video game. They make the whole concept of video games and adapt that. And I think that is an interesting way to do an action movie, especially because the concept is fairly simple. It's an assassin who just kills people. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to expand on that. And so I think doing it the way that they did it made it interesting and compelling. And I think that is what makes John Wick so easily entertaining. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Easily Entertained with me, your host, Bryson. If you enjoyed, be sure to give us a follow. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. New episodes come out Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And if you want all the latest updates on all things entertaining, join us on social media on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. On Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, this is Easily Entertained.